A dog is fiercely protective of a baby in a stroller. When his secret is revealed, the family realizes the dog's true purpose in the child's life. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. Charlie sat motionless on the freshly cut grass, his golden fur catching the afternoon sunlight. His eyes never wavered from the baby carriage where 6-month-old Alex slept peacefully. The white mesh covering provided shade, but Charlie could still see every slight movement the infant made through the material. His ears twitched at each sound, the rustle of leaves, distant car engines, and the animated conversation between Emily and her friend Sarah, who stood a few feet away on the concrete path leading to the house. Emily gestured enthusiastically as she spoke about her return to work, but Charlie noticed she kept glancing his way. He had positioned himself strategically, close enough to guard Alex, but far enough not to draw immediate attention. The spring breeze carried fragments of their conversation across the yard. "He's been like this since we brought Alex home," Emily explained, adjusting her ponytail. "At first, we thought it was just curiosity, you know, but it's different. He barely leaves Alex's side." Sarah shifted her weight, clutching her coffee mug tighter. "That's sweet though, isn't it? Having a furry bodyguard." The conversation paused as Mrs. Peterson, their elderly neighbor from 3 houses down, walked past with her small terrier. Charlie's posture stiffened, but he remained silent, tracking their movement until they passed the property line. Emily noticed, but continued her conversation. Then came the moment that changed the afternoon's peaceful atmosphere. A man in a delivery uniform approached the front gate, holding a package. He was new, not their regular delivery person, and Charlie's demeanor transformed instantly. His muscles tensed beneath his golden coat, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Sarah, who had been moving toward the carriage to peek at Alex, froze mid-step. The growl deepened as she got closer, and Charlie's teeth became visible. This wasn't the same gentle dog who usually greeted her with a wagging tail and happy jumps. "Charlie," Emily called out, surprised by his behavior. But Charlie didn't back down. His eyes remained fixed on Sarah, who slowly backed away from the carriage. "I've never seen him like this," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. She retreated to stand beside Emily, who looked equally confused and concerned. The delivery man hesitated at the gate, package still in hand. Charlie's attention shifted to him, the growl continuing. Emily had to walk to the gate herself to collect the package, while Charlie maintained his protective stance near Alex. Once both Sarah and the delivery man had moved away, Charlie's demeanor softened, though his alertness remained. He repositioned himself closer to the carriage, his body forming a barrier between it and the rest of the world. Emily watched this display with growing concern. This wasn't just normal dog behavior. This was something deeper, more intense. She'd had Charlie for 5 years, and while he'd always been well-behaved and friendly, this new protective streak was unprecedented. Later that afternoon, after Sarah had left and Emily had moved Alex's carriage to the porch, she sat on the steps, watching Charlie. He lay at the bottom of the steps, still alert, still watching. Even when a butterfly fluttered past his nose, he didn't chase it as he normally would have. "What's going on with you, buddy?" Emily murmured, more to herself than to Charlie. He turned his head slightly at her voice, but quickly returned to his vigilant watch. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the yard, but Charlie's dedication didn't waver. Emily pulled out her phone and began typing notes about his behavior. The way he positioned himself, the timing of his reactions, the specific triggers that caused him to growl. There was a pattern here, she realized, and she needed to understand it. As a light breeze rustled through the trees, Emily made a decision. Tomorrow, she would start investigating what was causing this change in her normally gentle companion. There had to be more to this story than simple protective instincts. The morning light filtered through Emily's home office as she scrolled through veterinary websites and dog behavior forums. Her coffee had gone cold, forgotten beside her laptop, as she absorbed information about canine protective instincts. Alex slept in his crib upstairs, monitored by a baby camera, while Charlie lay in his usual spot at the base of the stairs. Dogs often develop protective behaviors towards infants. She read aloud, scanning through a professional veterinary article. But this seems different. She opened another tab, finding studies about golden retrievers specifically. The breed was known for gentleness, not aggressive protection. Every source confirmed the same basic information. While dogs commonly showed protective instincts toward babies, Charlie's intensity seemed unusual. A movement outside her window caught her attention. Donna Ruth, their 70-year-old neighbor, was tending to her rose garden. Emily had always exchanged polite waves with the elderly woman, but hadn't interacted much beyond that. Today, though, something was different. Ruth kept glancing toward their house, particularly at Charlie through the front window. Emily watched as Ruth slowly made her way to their shared fence. Charlie, noticing the movement, trotted to the window but didn't show any signs of aggression. If anything, his tail wagged slightly. "That's interesting," Emily muttered. Noting his calm reaction to Ruth compared to his behavior yesterday, she decided to take advantage of the moment and headed outside, bringing her coffee mug as an excuse for casual conversation. "Good morning, Ruth," Emily called out, approaching the fence. "Your roses are beautiful this year." Ruth smiled, her weathered face crinkling warmly. "Thank you, dear. I couldn't help but notice your Charlie these past few weeks. He reminds me so much of my Maxwell." "Maxwell?" Emily asked, seizing the opportunity to learn more. Ruth's eyes softened with memories. "My old golden retriever. He passed away 5 years ago, but watching Charlie with your little one brings back so many memories." She paused, adjusting her gardening gloves. "Maxwell was the same way with my grandson when he was born." Emily leaned against the fence, her interest piqued. "Really? Was he also very protective?" "Oh yes," Ruth nodded, setting down her pruning shears. "It was like a switch flipped in him. He'd been the gentlest soul, but once Tommy came along, Maxwell became his guardian. Never aggressive, mind you, but very particular about who could get close." Emily described Charlie's recent behavior, including the incident with Sarah. Ruth listened intently, nodding in understanding. "Maxwell did something similar," she shared. "It was as if he could sense things about people that we couldn't. And you know what? He was never wrong about someone's character." Ruth's voice took on a more serious tone. "Dogs have instincts we don't fully understand, Emily. Sometimes they see things we miss." As they talked, Charlie appeared in the yard, moving closer to listen, but maintaining his usual position where he could see into the house through the window, keeping Alex in his sightline. "See how he positions himself," Ruth pointed out. "Maxwell used to do that exact same thing, always keeping Tommy in view, even when socializing. It's not just protection, it's dedication." Emily watched Charlie, seeing him through new eyes. "Did Maxwell ever calm down about it?" "Eventually," Ruth smiled. "Once he understood that we recognized and respected his role. These dogs, they take their responsibilities seriously. They're not just pets when it comes to children. They become guardians." The conversation was interrupted by Alex's cries through the baby monitor. Before Emily could move, Charlie was already at the door, waiting to follow her inside. Ruth watched with knowing eyes. "Stop by for tea sometime," Ruth called out as Emily headed in. "I have photo albums of Maxwell that might interest you." And Emily. She waited until the younger woman turned back. Sometimes the most protective souls are the ones who've known loss themselves. The cryptic comment stayed with Emily as she headed upstairs to Alex, Charlie following close behind. She glanced back at Ruth's house, wondering what other insights the elderly woman might have about her dog's behavior. There was something comforting about finding someone who understood what she was experiencing, who had witnessed this kind of devotion before. As Emily lifted Alex from his crib, she noticed how Charlie relaxed slightly in Ruth's presence, even from a distance. It was the first time she'd seen him truly at ease with someone outside the family since Alex's arrival. Perhaps Ruth would be key to understanding the mystery behind Charlie's transformation from a friendly family pet to Alex's dedicated protector. The afternoon sun cast warm patches across Ruth's living room floor as she arranged a plate of homemade dog treats alongside cookies for Emily. Through her window, she watched Emily pushing Alex's stroller up the walkway, Charlie trotting faithfully alongside them. His eyes scanned their surroundings with practiced vigilance, even in the quiet suburban street. Come in, Ruth called out, opening the door before Emily could knock. Charlie entered first, performing his now familiar sweep of the new environment. His nose worked methodically, but his posture remained relaxed, a stark contrast to his usual tense alertness around others. Emily maneuvered the stroller inside, smiling at Charlie's routine. He's so different here, she observed, parking the stroller where Charlie could easily see it. Usually, he's much more intense around others. Ruth nodded knowingly, setting down a water bowl for Charlie. Dogs can sense safe spaces and safe people. She reached down slowly, offering Charlie a homemade treat. He accepted it gently, then resumed his position near Alex's stroller. As they settled into conversation, Alex babbled happily in his stroller, reaching out whenever Charlie came close. The dog's response was remarkable. He'd softly nuzzle the baby's hand, then returned to his watchful position, creating a perfect balance between affection and protection. Watch this, Ruth said, pointing to Charlie's behavior. See how he checks on Alex every few minutes. That's not just training, that's pure instinct and love. Their peaceful afternoon was interrupted by the sound of a moving truck backing up next door. Charlie's ears perked up immediately, his body tensing as he moved closer to the stroller. Through Ruth's front window, they could see furniture being unloaded into the house that had been vacant for months. A man appeared in the driveway, tall, probably in his mid-30s, directing the movers with animated gestures. The moment Charlie spotted him, his demeanor changed dramatically. A low growl rumbled in his throat, his eyes fixed on the stranger. Charlie, Emily called softly, surprised by his reaction. Even at this distance, with walls and windows between them, Charlie's instincts had kicked in. Ruth observed the scene with interest. Maxwell used to react similarly to certain people, never without reason, mind you. She watched the new neighbor carefully. Sometimes dogs pick up on things we can't explain. The man, their new neighbor, looked toward Ruth's house, perhaps feeling their gaze. When he waved friendly, Emily waved back automatically, but Charlie's growl deepened. Has he ever been wrong? Emily asked, remembering Ruth's earlier comments about Maxwell's judgment of character. Ruth shook her head slowly. Not in my experience. Though sometimes what they're protecting us from isn't what we might expect. She paused, watching the scene outside. Sometimes it's not about danger at all, but about changes they sense coming. As the afternoon progressed, they watched the moving activity next door. The new neighbor made several trips in and out, occasionally glancing their way. Each time, Charlie's reaction was the same, quiet but intense disapproval. I've never seen him this reactive to someone at a distance, Emily admitted, concerned. Usually, it's only when people get too close to Alex. Ruth studied Charlie's behavior thoughtfully. He's not being aggressive, he's being cautious. There's a difference. She offered Charlie another treat, which he took without moving from his protective stance. Your boy here isn't just guarding against immediate threats, he's watching for potential ones. The moving truck eventually pulled away, leaving their new neighbor alone in his driveway, surveying his new property. When he started walking toward Ruth's house, Charlie's entire body stiffened. Maybe we should head home, Emily suggested, noting Charlie's increasing unease. It's almost time for Alex's nap anyway. Ruth nodded in agreement, but her eyes held concern. Come back tomorrow, dear. There are some things about Maxwell I think you should know. She glanced at Charlie, then back at Emily. Things that might help you understand what's really going on with your protective friend here. As Emily pushed the stroller home, Charlie positioned himself between them and the new neighbor's house, maintaining this formation the entire way. The man had stopped his approach when they left, but Charlie's attention never wavered. At home, even after Alex was settled in his crib for his nap, Charlie remained unusually alert, his eyes frequently drawn to the window facing their new neighbor's house. Emily watched him, Ruth's words echoing in her mind about dogs sensing things humans couldn't. What was it about this particular stranger that had triggered such a strong reaction in her normally discriminating dog? The following morning started with an unexpected knock at the door. Charlie, who had been lying near Alex's playmat in the living room, immediately positioned himself between the door and the baby. Emily peered through the peephole to find their new neighbor standing on the porch, holding what appeared to be a welcome basket. "Hi there, I'm Mark," he called through the door, his voice friendly. "I thought I'd introduce myself properly to my new neighbors." Emily hesitated, watching Charlie's reaction. His growl was now audible, teeth slightly bared. She had never seen him this adamant about someone. "Just a moment," she called back, quickly placing Alex in his playpen before approaching the door. Charlie's growl intensified as she reached for the handle. When she opened the door, keeping the security chain in place, Mark's smile faltered slightly at the sight of Charlie's protective stance. "I'm Emily," she managed, trying to maintain a polite tone despite Charlie's obvious distress. "I'm sorry, but this isn't a great time. My dog is very protective of the baby." Mark's eyes flickered to Charlie, then back to Emily. "I understand completely. Maybe another time." He set the basket down and backed away slowly, maintaining what seemed like practiced distance. Once Mark left, Emily made a decision. Charlie's behavior had crossed from protective to concerning, and she needed professional help. She called the veterinary clinic and scheduled an emergency appointment for that afternoon. Dr. Peterson's office smelled of antiseptic and pet shampoo. Charlie sat rigidly beside Emily in the examination room, his usual friendly demeanor toward the vet staff notably absent. Even here, in a familiar place, he seemed on edge. "So, tell me what's been happening," Dr. Peterson said, reviewing Charlie's chart while maintaining a safe distance. Emily detailed the recent changes in Charlie's behavior, his intense protection of Alex, his reaction to Mark, the constant vigilance. As she spoke, Dr. Peterson's expression shifted from professional interest to recognition. "When did you get Charlie?" he asked, scrolling through the digital records on his tablet. 5 years ago, from the local shelter," Emily replied. "He was about to then." Dr. Peterson nodded slowly, finding something in the records. "I thought so, Emily. There's something in Charlie's history that might explain his current behavior." He paused, considering his words carefully. "Before you adopted him, Charlie had a different family. They brought him in for emergency services after a tragic incident." Emily's heart rate quickened. "What kind of incident?" "I need to verify some details before sharing specifics," Dr. Peterson said, "but it involved a loss, a significant one." He looked at Charlie with newfound understanding. "Dogs don't forget trauma, Emily. They process it differently than humans, but it stays with them." Charlie's ears perked up at the serious tone of their conversation, but his eyes remained fixed on the door, monitoring for any movement outside. The intensity of his protective behavior toward Alex might be connected to this past experience. Dr. Peterson continued, "It's not uncommon for dogs who've experienced loss to become hypervigilant with their new families, especially when babies are involved." Emily reached out to stroke Charlie's head, feeling a new weight to his dedication. "Is there anything we should do?" "I'll need to pull his complete history," Dr. Peterson replied, making notes in the chart. "But for now, don't discourage his protective instincts entirely. Instead, we need to help him find a balance. He needs to know that you understand and appreciate his concern, while also helping him understand that not everyone is a threat." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Peterson added one final observation. "You mentioned your new neighbor, Mark. Charlie's reaction to him seems particularly strong. Keep monitoring that situation. Sometimes dogs pick up on things we miss, but other times their past experiences can color their current perceptions." Emily led Charlie to the car, her mind racing with questions about his mysterious past. What had happened to make him so fiercely protective? And was his reaction to Mark truly about the present? Or was it somehow connected to his past trauma? As they drove home, she noticed Charlie's eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror, as if making sure they weren't being followed. His behavior was no longer just a curiosity. It was a clue to a deeper story, one that might explain everything about his transformation into Alex's guardian. The manila envelope from the shelter sat unopened on Emily's kitchen counter for hours after it arrived. Dr. Peterson had requested Charlie's complete history, and the thick packet suggested a more complicated story than she'd imagined. Alex played in his bouncer nearby, while Charlie maintained his usual watchful position. Finally, after putting Alex down for his nap, Emily sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Charlie rested his head on her lap as she began reading, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. The documents revealed a heartbreaking story. Before coming to the shelter, Charlie had belonged to a family with a newborn puppy from another dog. The report detailed how Charlie had formed an intense bond with the puppy, displaying remarkable parental behavior despite not being the biological parent. Then came the tragic entry. During a house fire, Charlie had tried desperately to save the puppy, but couldn't reach the nursery where it was sleeping. Emily's hands trembled as she read the fire department's report. Witnesses described how Charlie had to be forcibly removed from the property, as he tried repeatedly to get back inside. The puppy didn't survive, and Charlie's original family, overwhelmed by the tragedy and his subsequent depression, surrendered him to the shelter. "Oh, Charlie," Emily whispered, running her hands through his fur. Everything made sense now. His protective behavior toward Alex, his constant vigilance, his unwillingness to let Alex out of his sight. He wasn't just being protective, he was ensuring he wouldn't lose another young one under his care. The baby monitor crackled with Alex's soft noises, and Charlie immediately stood at attention. Emily followed him upstairs to the nursery, watching with new understanding as he checked on Alex. His dedication wasn't just instinct, it was driven by a deep, personal understanding of loss. That evening, Emily made several phone calls. First, to Dr. Peterson, who recommended a pet behavioral therapist specializing in trauma. Then to the local community center, where she learned about pet therapy programs and support groups for animals dealing with past trauma. "We need to help him heal," she explained to Ruth over the phone later that night. "But we also need to honor his protective instincts. They come from a place of love and loss." Ruth's voice was gentle over the line. "Maxwell had a similar story, you know. Not as tragic, but he'd lost his first family before coming to me. It made him especially dedicated to Tommy. Sometimes, the deepest love comes from understanding what it means to lose." Over the next few days, Emily developed a plan. She started taking Charlie and Alex to the local park during quiet hours, allowing Charlie to protect Alex while gradually exposing him to positive interactions with others. She made sure to praise him when he remained calm around strangers, reinforcing that not everyone was a threat. The behavioral therapist suggested creating safe spaces throughout the house, where Charlie could watch over Alex while still feeling secure himself. Emily rearranged furniture to give Charlie clear sightlines to Alex's usual spots, reducing his anxiety about potential blind spots. Most importantly, she started including Charlie in more family activities, showing him that he was part of their unit, not just its guardian. During Alex's tummy time, she'd sit on the floor with both of them, letting Charlie understand that they were all protecting Alex together. "You're not alone in this anymore," she would tell him during their quiet moments. "We're a team now." The community center's pet therapy program proved especially helpful. Meeting other dogs who had experienced trauma helped Charlie understand he wasn't alone, and watching them interact safely with children gave him new models for protective behavior without anxiety. Slowly, subtle changes emerged. While Charlie remained vigilant, his reactions to strangers became less intense. He started distinguishing between actual threats and simple changes in routine. The desperate edge to his protection softened into something more measured, though no less dedicated. One breakthrough moment came during a supervised playdate with a neighbor's child. Charlie, while still protective, allowed the other child to play with Alex under his watchful eye. He remained alert, but didn't show any signs of stress or aggression. "He's learning to trust again," the behavioral therapist noted during a follow-up session. "Not just others, but himself. He's understanding that protecting Alex doesn't mean he has to carry all the responsibility alone." As Emily watched Charlie adapting to his role as protector while processing his past trauma, she realized that their family's story wasn't just about protection, it was about healing, trust, and the incredible capacity of love to overcome loss. The local community center's parking lot buzzed with activity during the weekend adoption event. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the air filled with barking and laughter. Emily had been hesitant about bringing Charlie and Alex to such a crowded event, but the behavioral therapist insisted it would be good exposure. Charlie walked beside Alex's stroller, his posture alert but noticeably calmer than a few weeks ago. The therapy sessions were showing results. He no longer reacted to every movement or sound, instead assessing situations before responding. "Look who's here," Ruth's voice carried across the lawn. She stood behind a table laden with homemade dog treats, wearing a volunteer badge. She'd been instrumental in organizing the event, leveraging her connections in the local pet community. As they approached Ruth's table, a group of children ran past, their sudden movement causing Charlie to stiffen. But instead of growling, he merely shifted closer to Alex's stroller, maintaining a protective presence without showing aggression. "That's remarkable progress," Ruth noted, watching Charlie's controlled response. She offered him one of her special treats, which he accepted while keeping one eye on Alex. A month ago, he would have put himself between those children and Alex immediately. The event provided multiple opportunities for Charlie to practice his newly developed skills. Several families approached to ask about adoption, drawn by Charlie's gentle demeanor with Alex. Emily found herself sharing their story, carefully edited, to help others understand the deep bonds possible between dogs and children. "Charlie's teaching us as much as we're teaching him," Emily explained to an interested couple. "He's shown us that protection doesn't have to mean isolation." Throughout the afternoon, Ruth kept a watchful eye on them, occasionally stepping in when she sensed Charlie becoming overwhelmed. Her presence had become a cornerstone of their support system, her understanding of both dogs and loss making her uniquely qualified to help. "I've been thinking," Ruth said during a quiet moment, while Alex napped in his stroller. "I'm retired, with plenty of time on my hands. If you ever need someone to watch Alex and Charlie while you're at work, I'd be happy to help." Emily looked at her, surprised by the offer. "Are you sure? Charlie can be quite particular about who he trusts with Alex." Ruth smiled, gesturing to where Charlie lay contentedly at her feet. "I think we've already established that Charlie and I understand each other." Later that week, they tested the arrangement. Emily had to return to work part-time, and finding childcare that could accommodate Charlie's protective nature had been challenging. Ruth's house became their solution, a familiar space where Charlie felt safe and Alex could thrive under the watchful eyes of both Ruth and his canine guardian. The arrangement proved transformative. Ruth's calm presence and understanding of Charlie's past helped him relax into his protective role without the intense anxiety that had characterized his earlier behavior. She knew when to give him space and when to encourage interaction, creating a balanced environment for both dog and baby. "Watch how he's learning to share the responsibility," Ruth pointed out one afternoon as Charlie allowed her to change Alex's diaper without hovering immediately overhead. "He's understanding that protection can come from more than one source." Their daily routine took on a comfortable rhythm. Emily would drop them off in the morning, and Ruth would spend the day engaging both Alex and Charlie in gentle activities. She read stories to Alex while Charlie lay nearby, taught Charlie new commands that helped him feel more in control. and created a structured environment that provided security for all of them. "You're doing more than just watching them," Emily observed one evening during pickup. "You're helping all of us heal." Ruth's eyes crinkled with understanding. Sometimes the best healing happens when we find others who share our experiences. Charlie lost someone he loved. I lost Maxwell. We both understand what it means to want to protect those we care about. The community events continued, with Ruth often coordinating activities that helped other dogs and families learn from Charlie's example. He became something of a local celebrity, the protective golden retriever who showed that past trauma didn't have to define future relationships. "He's not just Alex's guardian anymore," Ruth remarked during another adoption event. "He's becoming an ambassador for understanding how love and loss can coexist, how protection can come from a place of healing rather than fear." As Emily watched Charlie calmly interacting with other children while keeping Alex in his sight, she realized how far they'd come. Ruth's influence had helped transform their story from one of anxiety and hypervigilance to one of balanced protection and growing trust. The community center's main hall buzzed with preparations for Local Heroes Day, an event that had evolved from a simple gathering into a full-scale celebration. Banners bearing Charlie's photo hung alongside those of local firefighters and police officers. Emily watched as volunteers set up displays chronicling Charlie's journey from traumatized shelter dog to beloved community guardian. "I never expected this," Emily confided to Ruth as they arranged photos on a timeline display. The images showed Charlie's progression from his tense, hypervigilant early days with Alex, to recent pictures showing him calmly supervising playgroups. Charlie lay near Alex's play area, where several other children had gathered under parental supervision. Unlike his previous rigid alertness, he now maintained a relaxed vigilance, allowing the children to approach while keeping a protective eye on Alex. A small girl, about 3 years old, toddled toward Alex with a toy. In the past, such an approach would have triggered Charlie's immediate intervention. Instead, he watched carefully, only rising to move closer when the girl stumbled slightly. His body language remained calm and friendly, even as he positioned himself within reaching distance of both children. "Look at that," Ruth whispered, nodding toward the scene. "He's not just tolerating their presence anymore. He's actually facilitating safe interaction." The behavioral therapist, Dr. Martinez, who had been documenting Charlie's progress, made notes on her tablet. "This is exactly what we've been working toward. He's learned to distinguish between actual threats and normal social interactions." As more families arrived for the event preparations, Emily noticed something remarkable. Charlie had developed a pattern of creating what Dr. Martinez called safe social spaces around Alex. He would position himself in ways that naturally guided other children's movements, subtly directing traffic without showing any aggression. "Mum, can Tommy play with the baby?" a young boy asked his mother, pointing toward Alex. Charlie's ears perked up at the question, but he remained calm as the mother approached Emily for permission. "Of course," Emily replied, watching Charlie's reaction. "Charlie will keep an eye on them." The interaction that followed demonstrated how far Charlie had come. He allowed Tommy to sit near Alex, occasionally bringing toys to share between them. When Tommy moved too suddenly, Charlie didn't growl. He simply shifted positions slightly, creating a gentle barrier that slowed the boy's movements naturally. "He's teaching them," Dr. Martinez observed. "Watch how he models calm behavior around Alex. The other children are actually picking up on his cues." During the event planning, community members shared stories of how Charlie had influenced their own approaches to child safety and pet adoption. One family spoke about how watching Charlie had helped their anxious rescue dog adapt to their newborn. Another described how Charlie's example had convinced them to give a traumatized shelter dog a second chance. "It's bigger than just our family now," Emily realized, watching Charlie navigate the growing crowd with confidence. He's showing everyone that past trauma doesn't have to limit future connections. The preparation day culminated in a practice run of the ceremony. As people gathered to rehearse their parts, A group of children naturally gravitated toward Alex's play area. Charlie, instead of becoming overwhelmed by the activity, seemed to rise to the occasion. He created an invisible but effective boundary around the play space, allowing interaction while maintaining order. "This is why we wanted to honor him," the community center director explained to a local reporter who had come to preview the event. "Charlie's not just a success story, he's a teaching story. He shows us that protection doesn't have to come from fear, that trauma can be transformed into something positive." As the day wound down, Emily watched Charlie guide Alex through their evening routine with his usual dedication. But there was something different now. His vigilance had matured into something more nuanced. A protective presence that encouraged growth rather than just preventing harm. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day," she told him as they prepared to leave. Charlie's tail wagged gently, his eyes showing the same dedication they always had, but now tempered with wisdom and confidence. Ruth joined them at the exit, her eyes misty with pride. "Maxwell would have loved to see this," she said softly. "A dog teaching humans about healing, love, and the right way to protect what matters most." The morning of Local Heroes Day dawned bright and clear, with a festive atmosphere spreading across the town. Banners and balloons decorated the community center, and residents gathered eagerly, buzzing with anticipation. Charlie was officially being recognized as a community hero, and the story of his dedication to Alex had inspired both young and old alike. Emily arrived early with Alex and Charlie, who seemed to understand that today was special. He trotted beside the stroller, his tail wagging gently as people waved and greeted him. Ruth met them at the entrance, carrying a small bouquet of flowers that she handed to Emily. "For our hero," Ruth said, giving Charlie an affectionate scratch behind the ears. The ceremony began with a short speech by the community center director, who spoke about the importance of resilience and the bonds between humans and animals. Local families who had been inspired by Charlie's story were invited to share their experiences, and one by one, they recounted how seeing Charlie's transformation had encouraged them to give shelter pets a chance or teach their children about kindness to animals. Emily stood by with pride, her eyes glistening as she listened to the impact Charlie had made. When it was her turn to speak, she took a deep breath, holding Alex in one arm and resting her other hand on Charlie's head. "Charlie joined our family 5 years ago, but it wasn't until Alex arrived that we saw the depth of his loyalty and love," Emily began, her voice full of emotion. "His instinct to protect isn't just about guarding, it's about a deeper understanding of what it means to care for others, even when it's challenging." Charlie seemed to understand the attention was on him, and he stood quietly, his gaze moving between Emily, Alex, and the crowd. When Emily mentioned the trials he had overcome, his eyes seemed to soften, as though he was somehow reflecting on his journey with them. The highlight of the ceremony came when the community center director announced that Charlie was officially named Dog of the Year. The crowd erupted in applause, and Charlie accepted the ribbon placed around his neck with quiet dignity. Alex clapped his hands in excitement, and the two shared a moment that melted everyone's hearts. The little boy reaching out to touch his furry guardian's face with a delighted giggle. As the event continued, Ruth stepped up to say a few words about how much she had seen Charlie grow. "There's a powerful lesson here, one that Maxwell taught me long ago," she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Charlie reminds us that it's never too late to learn, to trust, or to love again. He's shown us all that protecting someone isn't just about keeping them safe. It's about giving them a space to grow and thrive." After the ceremony, Emily and Ruth joined the crowd as families gathered around Charlie to offer him treats, pets, and endless admiration. Children lined up to take pictures with him, and Charlie patiently accepted each interaction, his eyes soft and gentle, his posture relaxed. There was a calmness in him now, an acceptance of his role not just as a protector, but as a symbol of hope for the entire community. That evening, as Emily tucked Alex into bed and Charlie settled into his usual spot beside the crib, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had been through so much together, each of them healing in ways they hadn't anticipated. But through it all, Charlie had shown that love, loyalty, and resilience were far more powerful than fear. As she whispered a good night to both Alex and Charlie, she knew that their journey was far from over. They had become more than just a family. They were a testament to the strength found in unity, the bond that comes from understanding and trust. And with Charlie by their side, Emily knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, just as they always had.